a lot of people are coming out and attacking Trump for his comments on the military-industrial complex. And one of those tweets that I brought up for you today is from Ryan Brown, and he says, quote, "In an unprecedented public attack by a sitting U.S. president on the leadership of the U.S. military, President Trump has accused U.S. military leaders of seeking to start wars to boost the profits of defense contractors." And here's what Trump said in that clip, and I don't actually have that clip queued up for you guys right now, but it says, quote, "I'm not saying the military's in love with me. The soldiers are. The top people in the Pentagon probably aren't, because they want to do nothing but fight wars so that all of those wonderful companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make everything else stay happy." And so they're calling this an unprecedented attack on the military by a sitting U.S. president. But I mean, it's not unprecedented. There have been many presidents in the past who have commented on things, many presidential candidates who have said very similar things and even went even deeper into their thoughts on the military-industrial complex. One of those people, of course, would be Bernie Sanders. Another person, as far as like a sitting U.S. president, there have been many who have commented on the military-industrial complex, but Eisenhower was another big one, and Trump actually retweeted a Glenn Greenwald tweet where he posted a clip of Eisenhower talking about explicitly mentioning the military-industrial complex. And so we have this tweet here from Chris Hayes, and he says, "Trump retweeting Glenn posting Eisenhower on the military-industrial complex is really what this platform was made for. Yes, yes, yes. Just good faith discourse." So he's being sarcastic. There are many other journalists who are, bashing Trump for reposting this Eisenhower clip, calling it an attack on the military, while other media outlets are saying that his attack on the military or mentioning the military-industrial complex or what have you is like unprecedented for a sitting U.S. president, but it's not. And we're going to play this Eisenhower clip for those who haven't seen this before. It's a very famous clip. Bernie Sanders has posted this clip all over his social media. Before, of course, he lost to the Democrats on multiple occasions, but he's been posting this on his Twitter, on his YouTube, and this is the clip that Chris Hayes is talking about here. So we'll watch this.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
So that's Eisenhower talking about the military-industrial complex, and of course he was a sitting U.S. president. Many others have talked about this in the past. JFK was another one. There were a couple of other presidents who have explicitly mentioned the term military-industrial complex. Now, this clip, they're bashing Trump for sharing this clip. They're saying, well, this is an attack on the military. There's lots of journalists and outlets talking about how Trump reposted this Glenn Greenwald tweet of Eisenhower talking about the military-industrial complex, and they can't do to Glenn Greenwald. Well, they could do it to Glenn Greenwald, but they won't do to Glenn Greenwald what they've done to many other accounts who posted videos where Trump retweeted them, which is that ban the account, the original account that posted a video that Trump retweeted in order to suppress the reach of the video, to suppress the content within the original post. This is what they do all the time. But they're not going to do this to Glenn Greenwald. But the fact is that Bernie Sanders is one of these presidential candidates that I was talking about who has mentioned the military-industrial complex on several occasions. And on his YouTube channel, Bernie Sanders' verified YouTube channel, he has this clip of Eisenhower talking about the military-industrial complex. In fact, right there in the title on Bernie Sanders' YouTube channel, it says Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex. In fact, Trump has talked about the military-industrial complex before. They didn't freak out as much at this point, but Trump actually said the military-industrial complex in this clip. And a lot of you probably remember this clip. This was from, I think, last year. I think it was last year where Trump talked about how the military-industrial complex does like war. And so here's this clip right now.
Well, I'm the one that talks about these wars that are 19 years and people are just there. And don't kid yourself, you do have a military-industrial complex. They do like war. You know, in Syria with the caliphate. So I wipe out 100% of the caliphate. That doesn't mean you're not going to have these crazy people going around blowing up stores and blowing up things. These are seriously ill people. I don't want to say, oh, they're wiped out, you know, ISIS. But I wiped out 100% of the caliphate. I said, I want to bring our troops back home. The place went crazy. They want to keep, you have people here in Washington. They never want to leave. I said, you know what I'll do? I'll leave a couple of hundred soldiers behind. But if it was up to them, they'd bring thousands of soldiers in. Someday people will explain it.
Well, this is an example.
You do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex. They never want to leave. They always want to fight. No, I don't want to fight. But you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen. I gave the generals, I said, go ahead. You got 1 year. See what you can do in Afghanistan. So they fight and fight and fight. But, you know, we've taken it way down in Afghanistan. I don't know if you've seen that, Steve. We've taken it way down. Now, it's a rough place. It's a bad place. A lot of bad things happen. The World Trade Center bombers were sort of, that's like the Harvard University of terrorism, okay? If you want to be a terrorist, you go over there, okay?
And so that's Trump mentioning the military-industrial complex before. Another person said in the chat there, as we were watching this clip, that Tulsi Gabbard is another presidential candidate, that former presidential candidate that has discussed the military-industrial complex by name on several occasions, probably more than anyone else. I'm not sure if more than Bernie Sanders, but definitely up there in numbers as far as the amount of times that she has explicitly mentioned the military-industrial complex. And then also, you know, another reason that they really despise President Trump being in office is what he did with the clandestine covert aid to Syrian rebels trying to topple Assad. So right before Barack Obama left office, he started this program, this covert aid to Syrian rebels in order to overthrow the Assad regime in Syria. As we know, as many of you already know, Syria was on the list of regimes to be toppled by the Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton administration. When I say Hillary Clinton administration, I just mean, you know, in the State Department, and how she's the one pulling the strings more than Joe Biden, that's for sure. She was basically the vice president. But this is an article from the New York Times back in 2017. It says, President Trump has ended the clandestine American program to provide arms and supplies to Syrian rebel groups. American officials said, a recognition that the effort was failing and that the administration has given up hope of helping to topple the government of President Bashar al-Assad. The decision came more than a month ago, the officials said, by which time the effort to deliver the arms has slowed to a trickle. But if we look back to what Trump was when Trump had announced that we're going to be pulling out of Syria, we're going to be pulling out of these places, and we look at the reaction to this, right? We always saw the reaction. Trump is putting, you know, this group at risk, or Trump is putting that group at risk, or Trump is putting Christians at risk, or something like this, right? some sort of reaction from a lot of neocons, mainly Jewish neocons, or the media reacting to President Trump pulling out of Syria. I think at one point, Jared Kushner came out and said something like, "We have to remain in Syria to protect Israel." John Bolton was on Tucker Carlson back in 2017 and said, when Tucker Carlson asked, "What is the purpose of us being in Syria?" he said, "Well, we have to protect Israel." There was another question to John Bolton about Iran. Well, why is Iran our enemy? And John Bolton said, well, they're flying drones into Israeli airspace or something like this, right? And so the gist of it is that we have to remain in Syria in order to protect Israel. Now, on several occasions, Trump has threatened to pull out of places like Afghanistan, Syria. There have been really, I mean, if we put aside some things that are happening in Yemen and things that are happening with Saudi Arabia, there have been no new wars under President Trump. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I think that they're attacking him on this. And furthermore, if we just look at the people who are attacking President Trump, we can see quite clearly that he's on the right side of this, that we are on the right side of this. We'll look at this tweet from David Frum. "Every adversary of the United States, every enemy of liberal democracy must smile with gratitude every day that Trump is president." And he quote tweets Barbara Starr, who is putting up the quote from President Trump on the military-industrial complex. Another tweet from David Frum. "It's not the warriors who have seen combat who say, 'I love war.' It's Trump who said it." Max Boot, we all know Max Boot. He retweeted Maggie Haberman. And it says, "The White House is aware that they don't have a bench of top military officials willing to defend the president, but denigrating them as mainly serving the military-industrial complex is quite something." This is from Maggie Haberman, retweeted by Max Boot. Max Boot again here. He says Max Boot retweeting himself. "The Atlantic report clearly stung. Witness Trump's frenzied denials. He even called in the First Lady to defend him, but a president who has lied or deceived, blah, 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 blah." And then, of course, we have some Bill Kristol retweets. A lot of you know who Bill Kristol is. He retweeted Jonathan Martin, who said that Labor Day messaging from White House, "America's senior military officers are war profiteers." Not a joke, folks. And this is not like unprecedented. This is not a mind-blowing take. This is a take that people have had, that sitting presidents have had, that presidential candidates have had, that people in Congress have had, that people in the media have even had for a long time. It's so crazy to me to suggest that this military-industrial complex, that, you know, people aren't getting paid off in the military by these industries to push policy in Washington. I mean, what do you think AIPAC is there for? What do you think AIPAC is there for? Look who AIPAC funnels money to. Look at the people in Congress who AIPAC funnels money to. Look at the policies that they push. It's all about war. They're all a part of you can say that there's a lot of different organizations that are a part of this Israel lobby. We're going to go over that tomorrow. We're going to make the whole episode about the Israel lobby. I read a couple of books over the past couple of days, and so we're going to talk about my thoughts on what I've gathered from those books. But a lot of people would say that a lot of these organizations, from AIPAC to the Zionist Organization of America and many other organizations are part of this Israel lobby, but they're all a part of this, what we call the military-industrial complex, working in cahoots with each other in order to push for war in different regions in the Middle East, mainly for different goals, for different purposes, for different interests. My goal is to eventually become a powerhouse of truth. That is why it is imperative that you check the links in the description below and go to either Patreon and Subscribestar and support us for at least the cost of a cup of coffee a month. We already have writers writing for TheRedElephants.com, but we'd like to bring on more in the near future. By the way, at TheRedElephants.com, you can also find t-shirts, hats, and other products. Check the links in the description below. It helps us out tremendously.